All right, let's go ahead and get started. So this session is being recorded, and welcome everyone to Seamless Bay Area's webinar entitled "What Can California Learn from Transit in Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan?" My name is Ian Griffiths, and I'm a principal consultant with CPCS, which is a transportation planning firm, and I'm also a board member and former co-founder and former policy director of Seamless Bay Area. And I'll be moderating today's session as well as sharing some of my own reflections on this topic at the end of the session. For those of you who don't know, Seamless Bay Area is a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating a world-class, seamlessly integrated public transportation system across the San Francisco Bay Area. And one of the things that we have done in order to advance this goal is research and promote effective transit practices from other parts of the world that can better inform policymaking here in California and in the Bay Area. We're really in particular interested in understanding the governance and funding structures and policies that lead to world-class transit that attracts riders, that's fast, frequent, reliable, and integrated. We know that no two places are alike, and there's always going to be solutions that we know are going to be unique to the Bay Area that require local solutions, but we also think there's a lot we can learn from other places, and we should be informed and inspired by the experiences of others. So I'm very pleased today to be joined by two very special guests who have a lot to share about effective transit practices in different Asian countries. In the past, Seamless has done different educational sessions about Switzerland, about Sweden, about different European systems, but this is really, this is our first time sort of profiling those effective transit practices in Asia. So first, our first panelist today will be Dr. Jason Chang, a professor in the Department of Civil Engineering and the Director of Advanced Public Transport Research at the Advanced Public Transport Research Center at National Taiwan University. Dedicated to sustainable transport development for more than 25 years, Dr. Chang continues leading his research team and international partners to change our cities towards sustainable mobility in Taiwan, India, Indonesia, China, and other countries around the world. Our second panelist is Seung Lee, who is the author of the acclaimed blog that some of you may know called Substack Ban, which focuses on the political economy and history of mass transit networks around the world. And he has written extensively on Korean and Japanese mass transit, as well as other systems. But he also just came back from a trip to Japan and Korea. He grew up taking public transit in Seoul and Los Angeles and now lives in the Bay Area. So he'll be speaking about some of his research on this topic. And as for my own involvement in this panel, I had the privilege of researching what practices California can learn from South Korea and Taiwan due to the Wendy Tao Smart Cities Scholarship, which I received last year and which allowed me to travel to Taiwan and Korea. And that's where I actually met Dr. Chang. And so I'll be sharing some of my findings from that to round us out. And then we should have some time for some Q&A discussion. So please, as we go along, if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll try to get to them. Otherwise, please keep yourself muted. And I'll just want to, before I pass it off to Dr. Chang, just note that I think this is a particularly important moment in time to be having this discussion in the Bay Area and in California, to be looking abroad and looking at global best practices and looking at places that have really transformed, often coming from a very challenging circumstance or from a time of crisis, because transit is in crisis right now in the Bay Area and across many U.S. regions. There are, due to changes in revenue and fares, there's the prospect of major service cuts. We're in this point where we have to decide, are we going to invest in systems so that they can thrive, or are we going to let them fail? And I think the stories that we're going to hear from Taiwan and Korea are actually both very hopeful ones, and they certainly feel very relevant to the moment that we are in right now in California. And I think they also we can learn. Now's an important time to be thinking of transformative models that are maybe different from how we've done things before in California to meet this time in our state. So with that, please, Dr. Chang, take us away, and we'd love to learn more about some of what we may be able to learn from Taiwan's experience in the past few decades.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really my privilege to be invited to join this seminar, and I'm really happy that Ying can be, with me in Taipei. Uh, we share, lots of information, and we also learn from each other. Uh, Let me see. Oh, just a second. So now the screen's okay?
Yep,
Good, good.
we can.
Um, since time is so limited, I would like to share with you um, some general information of the public transportation system in Taiwan, and particularly in Taipei. Um,
Sorry, Dr. Chang, could you just move the window, the just the our faces are blocking part of the slide. So if you just want to move the little where our faces are over to the side, then we can see the whole slide.
uh,
Or if not, no worries.
okay.
We can see the whole screen, but
Oh,
we can't see the right-hand side of the slide because it's blocking.
so you cannot see the whole of.
We can see the slide, but except for just we can see the zoom panel with our faces. So if you can just drag that over to the side or off to the side, then we should be able to. There we go. Now we can see the
Oh,
whole
okay,
slide.
good, good.
Go ahead.
Okay. I give you some example that we have. We developed in the past, I would say 25 years. Uh, and and then some lessons I learned from this whole process. Taiwan, the small island, we have 23 million population. Uh, we have lots of motorcycle. You can see here, almost 14 million and 8 million cars. So in terms of motorization, is quite high. Uh, in the past 20 years, the whole freeway network being implement multi-lane free flow uh, distance-based ETC system. Uh, all the buses with GPS, so we can check all the passenger information and bus arrival time in each of the station in whole Taiwan. And 80% of our taxi with also GPS. Um, and since 92% of our car equipped with we call e-tag, so that they can moving around, as I mentioned, the ETC, also the smart ticketing, a smart parking system. Uh, 95% of public transit passenger using smart car ticketing system, and now move into so-called multi pavement system. And in the past 60 years, as you know, inclusive mobility become very important for Taiwan, but particularly for the rural area. So we already implement 460 on-demand service in those rural area. For the metro network, you can see here, in addition to the high-speed rail, which being established 20 years ago, and from Taipei to Taiwan, to Kaohsiung, southern Taiwan, 360 kilometer. Now we already make decision that we extend the high-speed rail to the east part of Taiwan and to the south part of Taiwan, and then hopefully become a circle line along the Taiwan. And lots of metro construction now on the way. Currently, in Taipei, we have 220 kilometer metro, and in Taichung, just in the beginning stage. And Kaohsiung, we have 65 kilometer, including one circle line for the light rail, the tram. Still, 80 kilometer metro under construction, and almost 260 kilometer in planning stage. This is Taipei, the metropolitan area in the northern part of Taiwan. You can see in the top of the photo, still lots of motorcycles. But fortunately, in the past 20 years, we have lots of regulation, management policy. So you can see they follow the law and then stop behind the stop line, and that that kind of I would say culture take more than 20 years to make it happen. In the metropolitan area of Taipei, 2.6 million car and 3.4 million motorcycle. So although we have the underground metro 146 kilometer and airport link from central Taipei to Taoyuan Airport, link several city, 53 kilometer, and also tram 15 kilometer. Daily trip 2.2 million. And we also have the regional rail and regional bus. In the metropolitan area, we have 6,000 buses. The daily also 62 kilometer. I call it a pre-BRT, since it's also only the exclusive bus lane. You see the third photo here in the central area of Taipei, and public bike. We have the public bike since 2009, and now the metropolitan area having 46 public bike, and it's not the floating public bike. You can see the photo down there. The average turnover rate more than 8.3 per vehicle per hour, per vehicle per day. So that become another popular, I would say, the public transportation system in Taipei. However, the overall green transportation system, including metro, public bike, regional rail, bus, contribute 35%. My expectation 20 years ago was 60%. But in the downtown, in the core area of the city, is already more than 65% using green mobility. In the West Corridor, you can see mainly travel still by private vehicle, with 65%. Sorry. And you see, in addition to investment in the public transportation system, we also put a lot of effort to manage the motorcycle and car, particularly in the city area. This is what we propose to Taipei city government as an advisor to mayor since 1994. First, world-class metro. Second, well-known bus rapid transit. And integrate BB&W. I'll explain to you what is BB&W. And then comfort taxi and DRT system. ITS application for the green mobility. And you can see the photo here. We have easy car. That was implemented 2002. Basically, for all the transporting system in Taipei metropolitan area, now become the e-purse. So you can buy anything in the convenience store. And also, I use this card enter my lab, become a security card, an ID card. This is what I call BB&W. It's also become a policy in many Taiwanese city. I find I proposed this idea when I was invited speaker in Paris for the ITF, International Transportation Forum. And a deputy mayor asked me, Jason, what is your definition for green mobility? And this is what I come out, BB&W. If any city can have very good integration of a bus, bicycle, metro, and walk, and it become a green transport and health city. And it's easy to talk, but very difficult to implement it because this system, and in most of the time, under the different authority in the city government. So you need to have a very strong and a consistent collaborative effort. I also put TOD, MOD, and ICT in the core of this integration. So you need to implement this BB&W in the very beginning of the urban planning and metro development, and not just TOD. Now we have the mobility-oriented development, and as you know, we have a very strong ICT industry in Taiwan. So, we need to apply the ICT to provide seamless services among this system. And let me show you this net zero transport policy. It's just come out 3 years ago by our president. The reason I propose this share with you this net zero transport policy in Taiwan, because you can see that all this item of what we mentioned in the past 20 years, for the green mobility. I call it the 3+2 policy. 3, green mobility, zero emission in electrified mobility, and TOD. The +2, which is TOD. under the different ministry in Taiwan. The other one is the green style behavioral change. That is under the authority of Ministry of Environment. So we have now we finally bring this green transporting policy into our national policy. Let's also give you some idea what we have in terms of mobility service in Taiwan. I love to share with you this photo because we have a very good policy called T-Pass, which means you pay about $40 per month. You can use all the metro, bus, regional rail, public bike, and bus in the Taipei metropolitan area. This idea was proposed during the election, during the mayor election. You see the left-hand side, those mayor candidates belong to different party. I mean, belong to one PPT party. The right-hand side belong to another party. And the left-hand side for mayor proposed this T-Pass policy, but no one being elected, no one. And fortunately, we have a very good minister, Dr. Ken Wang. He say it's a good policy. So no matter which party propose, I would like to implement it. So so the four elected mayor in the northern Taipei metropolitan area, they celebrate after about 6 months of being elected. They start the T-Pass policy. This is what we propose to next stage mobility service using the T-Pass scheme. So you can see here, if you pay US dollar 18 then you can take all the buses and plus public bike. If you add up additional 10 US dollar, and then you pay, you can add up metro, and then you add up another 20 US dollar, you can enjoy the e-scooter sharing system. So which means you have different package and of course different price with different combination of the services. This is what we working on for this. In terms of technology application, this is our smart e-bus. We mapping with the GPS and ADAS information with the driver behavior, so we can identify those risk driver. And your right-hand side, you can see we implement the passenger information system in all the bus system. You can also check those information with your smartphone in whole Taiwan, particularly in the northern Taipei metropolitan area. Okay, let me summarize what I share with you in terms of the public transportation system, green mobility, particularly in the northern Taiwan area. What kind of key factor I believe make this happen and being successful? First one, I would say the culture and core value. Taiwan, I would say, is a fusion of Chinese culture, American culture, and and Japanese culture. 80% of our government officers obtain their degree from United States. uh, so in the early stage, we invite lots of experts from the United States, good and bad. We learn a lot, and we also, sometimes we do our planning of adopting the American approach, which may not be suitable for Taiwan. But for those planning methodology from Japan, and is very good, that have a great influence on the urban planning and urban design, particularly in the past few years. And PPPP, public-private people partnership. For example, the ETC system, that's the BOT project. Smart car ticketing system, that is the PPP project. Okay, even our high-speed rail is a PPP project. So we implement a lot the PPP scheme. I put another P, people, because we invite all the social society join in the process of those policy formulation. Third one is democracy. Every 4 years we have a mayor election. I've been invited to give lecture in the campaign process. So we help them to formulate the white book of green mobility, sustainable urban development. So I believe that also make the mayor, respect expert and not only during the election process, but also after being elected, they also form a think tank, as I mentioned here in the in number 4, and also formulate several committee, to help the policy and strategy formulation and also the implementation. Next one, the collaboration is very important. Taiwan is also a small island, but we have a central government ministry, and we have local government, we have regional government. So the strong collaboration that's very important to achieve the those metro and public buy. Public buy, the first 30 minutes free. In a very early stage, the central government Ministry of Environment provide the funding, and 75% of our metro investment from the central government. But of course, you need to make the justification in terms of urban development, sustainability, and also the self-liquidation. Okay, and 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 the international expert, we from time to time invite international expert from Japan, United States, Canada, Europe, help to us to review those policy implementation plan, so I believe those international collaboration is very crucial in past 30 years. In early stage, I think lots of our Taiwanese students, studying in the United States, they staying there, they're living there, but from time to time they contribute, to our national development project. Last but not least, the technology application. Now Taiwan, I would say, is a country that love to adopt and implement applying those high technology in the transportation area, so that we have the opportunity, to use those ICT, in our transportation and mobility services. Oh, okay. This conclude my presentation. I would love to answer your question and also your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chang. We're going to go straight along. We'll get to questions, I think, at the end. So please put your questions in the chat if you do have them. But I'd like to then now turn over to uh, Seung to do his presentation. And thank you so much, Dr. Chang. That was great. So you'll need to share your screen.
Hello, everyone. I think everybody can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Great. So, yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And it's also a big honor to go after Dr. Chang, who, is an academic of many decades who have been studying this on the ground in Taiwan, whereas I have been just kind of someone with a passionate interest in wanting to talk more about transit systems that is not outside of the United States, and including and also the Anglosphere, really, because I feel like there are so many priors and misconceptions about how these countries have developed mass transit to the successes that they have become without really delving into the why and the how. And I think one of the biggest kind of misconceptions I see is just the idea that Korea and Japan have kind of just almost like either by biology or by divine right, just have kind of inherited the transit systems that they have. And I just want to really kind of push back on that and highlight kind of the historical progress that had to be made and the political economy in which those countries had existed within to be able to push towards the progress of public transit that people like you and me and also the native residents gets to enjoy every day. So I just really want to highlight just how, we talk about how bad it is in the United States, transit-wise, and of course we're facing a major transit cliff that is impacting not only the Bay Area but many cities across the United States. But I really want to highlight just how dire the situation was in Japan and Korea, not in living memory. Um, I want to start with Japan just because it kind of went through the more dramatic and more immediate, more related, I guess, because we're the United States after all, devastation from World War II. And even prior to that, even prior to the unconditional surrender of Japan in August 15, 1945, Japan has been kind of extracting all profits and revenues that is dedicated towards the Japanese government railways, as it was called then, towards the war economy. So they have been under deferred maintenance since the mid 1930s. So 10 plus years of deferred maintenance and continuous bombings have just left the state of Japanese rail in what General MacArthur's staff has called it a state of collapse. And you get to see the numbers pretty clearly that, in the first 16 months after their unconditional surrender and American occupation, 360 people were killed in derailments alone. And that did not really stem anytime soon. In 1947, there was the largest railway accident fatalities in Japanese history in Hachiko Line near Saitama, which is just north of Tokyo, where 184 people were killed. And that kind of just leads into just a highly volatile start to the publicly owned Japanese national railways. Derailments continued, but also the first president of the Japanese National Railways was killed and dismembered, and his body was left on the tracks a month into his job. And it is considered one of the big post-war Japanese mysteries that still, and entice novelists and artists in Japan to this day. And Korea, I would argue, sustained even worse damage, infrastructurally at least, because of the Korean Wars that went from June 1952 1953, where unlike in Japan during World War II, where the rail tracks were not so much damage. It was really the personnel that was really taking the hit from the bombings. Both sides, on the communist side and also on the Allied side, were directly targeting railways and railway hubs and railway stations to cripple the infrastructural capacity of their enemy. And it really was reflected, I think, in the Seoul tram network. Seoul used to have one of the largest tram networks in Asia. And one night that the total trackage was lost, and nearly half of the rolling stocks were just obliterated because of the war and the bombings that continued in phases as it traded hands between South Korea and North Korea. And from the bottom, you have to build up, and that kind of building up had a lot of growth spurts, but also a lot of growing pains. I want to start with Japan once again, because they were kind of the first people to kind of build, and Korea's timeline is much more concentrated. It really doesn't start until the 1970s, whereas Japan really got a head start in the 1950s. The now beloved Tokaido Shinkansen obviously finished in 1964, but with twice the cost overruns, and it went through so many issues, including the JNR president getting fired after basically cooking up the books to cover up the cost overruns that were going into the Shinkansen so that he could keep the project alive. I think a lot of high-speed rail fans find attraction to this story, as at least in California, because I've seen it quoted over and over, at least among those who want to defend California high-speed rail. But for me, my bigger interest is in the commuting in five directions operation. That was financed without Ministry of Finance backing, and JNR took a lot of high-interest bonds to pay off an incredible 2-decade-long infrastructural package to build up capacity in the Tokyo area. And it crippled JNR financially, and it will lead to really the privatization of JNR into now what we know as Japanese Railways in 1987. Korea is not that it's not quite so high risk, high reward. It's a lot more political. Seoul Metro, at least the first line, was really not popular with the elites. The Ministry of Finance was quoted as saying, if you build this subway, the country will be in ruins, because Korea was still a very developing country with a very small but fast-growing economic base, industrially at least. And a lot of Park Chung-hee's cabinet members had severe doubts that Korea could even build a subway. In the next generation, let alone in 1974. I went through a lot of delays. I went through a lot of interesting choices. Line 1 is, I think, a very interesting metro line, quite unique across the world. And I just want to highlight that the KTX line between Seoul and Busan took a very long time. It broke ground in 1992, and it was not finished in full until 2004. I think it's really important to highlight that even one person in power can really make a big difference in reshaping the trajectory of a city or a nation's transit fate. And I want to start off with one in Korea and one in Japan. And in Korea, we have the Seoul mayor Yang Taek-sik, who was the mayor during the 1970s, who basically spearheaded the construction of Line 1. The first subway metro line that goes through the kind of the heart of Seoul. And he also set in motion a 4-line plan that crisscrosses through Seoul to build a subway network. Now in Seoul, we have 9 metro lines and many more commuting lines and high-speed rail lines that connect from Seoul to Seoul. I don't think it would have really gotten off the ground started without Seoul Mayor Yang to kind of put his head out there politically to convince President Park to get the construction going. And on the right-hand side with Japan, we have the JNR president, Reisuke Ishida, who basically blessed the commuting five directions operations to go forward. For a while, JNR was pressured by other government entities to do something about the overcrowding in its regional lines. And JNR thought it was not in their purview to do something about it. They thought it was a housing issue, not a transit issue. Ishida took came in and was like, no, we got to finance this no matter what, because it is life or death situation for the vitality of Tokyo's regional rails that JNR operates. And he also opened Tokaido Shinkansen, not Shinji Sogo, who is really the father of the Tokaido Shinkansen. Now, though, like we have pretty black and white examples of Yang and Ishida as transit champions, but things get a little murky with a lot of politicians. Not all politicians are these perfect models that will come save and salvage transit in your city. I want to start with the left example, Seoul Mayor Lee Myung-bak, who I'm sure if you watch any sort of urbanism videos, is famous for turning a highway, removing a highway in the middle of Seoul and turning it into a river. And he cleaned it up. It's a beautiful kind of stream in the middle of Seoul, and traffic just went away. He also reformed Seoul's bus network, but he also greenlit privatization of Line 9, which under his administration underfunded, undercalculated, and underhired before Line 9 opened. And Line 9 has seen and continues to see tons of overcrowding issues. And, when he became president, after he got president, he was jailed for just incredible amounts of corruption that was unveiled after his departure of presidency. And when we have on the right side, Toshio Doko, who was the chairman of the second Rincho, which is kind of like a subcommittee, which kind of really provided the bureaucratic ammunition in 1979 and 1980 to spur Prime Minister Yasuhiro Nakasone to push for the privatization of JNR. And he was a corporate businessman through and through. I think he ran Toshiba at one point, like the computer company, and he was the public face of this administrative reform movement, a very neoliberal tinted movement to belittle the labor unions, bring JNR to his heel, and privatize. I think he went on 50 different TV shows just to talk about privatization in the early 1980s. As Yang, Ishida, Doko, and Lee show, politics matter here and there. Here are some kind of hinge points that I've identified. Political decisions are made, after the nation's kind of post-war settlements that I think really determine the fate of their transit histories. I want to highlight just only two on each side. 1948, under American occupation, the Americans were negotiating on behalf of GNR with the Japanese politicians to determine what exactly a Japanese national railways will look like. In the end, the American Supreme Commander Allied Personnel, I believe, SCAP, kind of capitulated more or less to the Japanese politicians, giving the Diet, the parliament, funding and infrastructural funding, and just the whole kind of autonomy that JNR really could have used to buffer up its walls from political influence. And I think that was a major reason why 40 years later, JNR was privatized. And 1986, in that push towards privatization was not like a one big beautiful bill kind of thing where just everything was kind of put together in one thing and bingo presto, it's so privatized. There were, I think, 6 bills that led to the privatization, and one of them relaxed the public railway, JNR, and soon to be privatized railway, Air, JR, to be able to invest in non-railway activities such as real estate, hotels, malls, transit-oriented developments. And only then was JR able to kind of put money into real estate and build that kind of real estate transit machine that kind of helps bring in revenue and helps provide exceptional service and improvements. In Korea, I mentioned the President Park's backing of Mayor Yang to bless Seoul Metro Line 1. I don't think anything could have happened in Korean mass transit history without that critical hinge point where President Park said, I'm going to listen to the mayor of Seoul over his own finance minister to conduct the construction of Line 1. And I want to highlight just that Korea went through a democratization very late. 1987 was our first free democratic elections after 25-year rule of military dictatorship. And the president that was elected, Roh Tae-woo, made a campaign promise that he will build a Seoul to Busan high-speed rail. And that political promise was the spurt that was needed to create and construct TTX. And now it is a whole national network of its own.
Sorry, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up in maybe 60 seconds. And
yeah, sure. Let me just go right into then what can California learn? I think there's so much we can learn, and obviously we'll share the presentation. I think a couple of things I want to highlight is that Korea is just expanding and growing and experimenting without really kind of any sort of holding back. And I think that's really attractive about what Korea is doing and why Korea is such a model country for mass transit. And Japan is really doing interesting things despite all the different modes and different private public operators that exist, where I want to highlight the 2005 Act of Enhancement of Convenience of Urban Railways. The Japanese government basically told private operators to get their act together and connect as best as possible with the GR networks and with each other as much as possible. And only then, were all these networks integrated into kind of the seamless national network that I think so many people who go visit Japan enjoy to this day. And I will wrap it up there. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Seung. So I'm going to just go right into my section, and I want to make sure we finish on time, and hopefully I'll hope to finish so that we can have a little bit of time for questions. So I'm going to just present on lessons from I went to Taiwan and Korea. So those two countries specifically. And I think I'm just going to be highlighting some of this, I won't repeat the things that have already been said by others. And again, this was part of I had this great opportunity thanks to the Wendy Tao Smart Cities Scholarship. Wendy Tao was a business innovator, gifted scholar, a global leader with a passion for sustainable transport and smart cities. She was happened to be a classmate of mine, actually, also back when I did my master's degree at Berkeley. And she sadly passed away in 2022, but a scholarship was set up in her honor that funds a US-based professional to do a sort of travel research project. And so that was what created the opportunity for me. You can get more information about the scholarship on this website and donate to it if you are interested. The next opportunity to apply for that is in 2026. So I chose to go to Taiwan and Korea for a couple of reasons. I specifically chose these two countries because they seemed more relevant to California. They're upper income, democratic, countries with multiple parties. They've made rapid progress over the past couple of decades. They both have large urban areas, though I'll acknowledge that the densities are generally much higher in urban areas, and that is obviously their difference with California. I traveled there earlier this year. I had interviews with a number of city and transit agency officials. I really was incredibly generous. I met incredibly generous people in both countries, such as Dr. Chang, who were willing to spend a lot of time with me and introduce me to other people. So it was a really just lucky experience that I had, and I'm very, very grateful for everyone who shared their time with me. I also, of course, wrote a lot of transit myself, so just brought my own experiences into this, and then did a number of desk research of existing academic research while I was there. Just some high level successful outcomes really as a user, as an observer of these systems, and I'm trying to combine observations from both of these experiences and really just validate maybe some of the things that you heard from others, which is there's just what you see is just the incredible availability and visibility and centrality of transit in society. Even just arriving at this is the Taipei airport, it's almost difficult not to end up at the MRT station. It's definitely the primary means of transportation, and that's reinforced in so many different ways. The customer experience, it's generally very easy to use in both of these contexts. The customer information system, and I don't think it's always been this way, but certainly today it has evolved to be relatively simple, consistent graphics. A lot of these stations can be quite complex. Bus lines are often difficult, especially when you might not you speak the local language, but consistent use of bus line diagrams, always in the exact same place in every single bus, was something I really appreciated as a user. And it was very evident how consistent information was. When you were there, it was fast. There's been investments in making sure transit is the fastest way, or it is a very time competitive way of getting places. Of course, Taiwan and Korea both have built high-speed rail systems. There are many more systems under construction that are designed to travel at fast speeds and really enhance regional connectivity. And the outcome of all of that is very high levels of ridership. Just the Greater Seoul region has 38% mode share for transit. Taipei, this is around the figure. It probably is a different source from what Dr. Chang said, but it's a 30%, 35%. In the Bay Area, we're below 5%. 5% was actually the pre-pandemic figure. The practices that I've observed and, in my research and interviews that led to these good outcomes were, service integration of all modes, bus, transit, the BBMW. I was really focusing on probably the M, B, and M, but also, all of those modes the networks are integrated, the services are integrated, the stations are integrated, and the fares are integrated. I think Korea had a higher level of fare integration than Taiwan did. But smart cards have existed for a long time. Both countries use a distance-based fare structure. In South Korea, it's across all modes. And really in the T-Pass example in Taiwan is a more recent program, but it's, this multi-agency pass that is showing really promising ridership benefits. It's similar to what we have going on in the Bay Area with the Clipper Bay Pass, basically a product that allows unlimited travel on local and regional systems for one fixed price. In both of these cases, it's also a very discounted price, so it's very attractive. It actually needs to be highly subsidized by the government. But it's really effective in building ridership, and it's something that it was deployed very quickly in both of these countries. It was deployed thanks to the political will in Taiwan, I believe, within a year of being committed to. And unfortunately, just by contrast, the Clipper Bay Pass pilot took over a year to do. We're now 2 or 3 years into this pilot, and we take years and years to scale up some of these programs that could be building ridership right away, and that we've observed in these two countries. They've been able to deploy these programs so much more quickly. And that's really inspiring for us. Bus priority infrastructure, buses get priority in both. That's something that is continuing, is very obvious when you're there, that there's exclusive lanes, there's really high quality infrastructure and facilities with information, with shelter. And that is part of what is driving, the competitiveness of those things. Here's my slide of 9 specific lessons for California. One is that transit is absolutely thriving in both of these places. So, I feel like sometimes in the US and in California, there's this attitude that transit is this backward, or it's like the technology, or it's a system that is not of the next century, it's of the last century. And you look at these two examples that are extremely technologically advanced and in ways more advanced, adopting even technologies at a greater pace than we are. And transit is absolutely central and thriving in both of these contexts. I think both Dr. Chang mentioned another lesson learned is that these systems got that way by looking outside and looking at other world-class systems and learning from them and bringing back what's relevant and acknowledging where they had things to learn. And that is an attitude we need to, I think, adopt in California and look to these systems and look to other places and be open to these different systems and find how we can apply them. Fundamentally, integration builds ridership. And integration is effective for building the case for increased service and funding. It's not one before the other. I think particularly in the example of South Korea, the integration actually was sort of a condition of the case for additional funding, and that's, I think, very much the linkage that is being discussed right now in California. It also, I think, another key lesson, though, is that greater efficiency doesn't necessarily mean less subsidy. In both the cases, the T-Pass in Taiwan and I think the bus reforms in the early 21st century in Korea, they're a program that generated ridership that might have been expected to be cost neutral, ended up not being cost neutral, but it was so successful at generating ridership that it increased the political will to continue subsidizing transit, and that those new dollars for transit would actually lead to a greater benefit. So I think that's the common experience, is that even with reforms that may make things more efficient and effective, in general, both of these examples show that an ongoing public subsidy is going to be required, and really further investments are necessary to really move the needle on building ridership. In both cases, strong regional and state leadership has been essential, as well as the political leaders that champion these causes. We need political champions, as well as activism and members of the public. And that really does make a difference. And I observed that and heard that over and over again. So I hope that's an inspiring message for those of us here that feels like sometimes what we do doesn't matter. I think in these two places, it actually has been part of the success. Okay, I'll stop. That is my 9 takeaways, and I wanted to highlight that we do have some really important opportunities here in California coming up, where some of these specific ideas are being discussed. And one of them is there's a state task force right now called the SB 125 task force that is considering policies at a statewide level that could promote regional integration, require fair integration at a regional level, and that also could unlock a new sustainable source of funding that could do that. So the state is considering moving in that direction, but it's subject to that task force, and then ultimately our legislators and political leaders championing those ideas that may come out of that task force. And finally, the Bay Area, as many people will know, is considering a regional ballot measure. SB 63 is the bill that will authorize that. And there's some policies associated with that would promote and earmark some funding for integration, but there's still some opposition to those policies. So those are 2 things to watch out for. You can go to Seamless Bay Area's website or subscribe to the newsletter to get more information about those opportunities if you want to know more. We're at 9 o'clock, or 9 o'clock where I am, which actually, even though I live in the Bay Area, I happen to be in a different city right now. So we'll do 5 minutes of just question. I want to do a little bit of a discussion, but if folks do need to leave, this session will be recorded. You can catch the discussion afterwards. But if our 2 panelists don't mind staying for just a couple more minutes, we'll stay on. But I really, I'm really glad we got a chance to hear both of your presentations. So I'm curious. I just have a question for Dr. Chang first. So do you, some of the reforms that you were discussing, were there any opponents, or what were the biggest obstacles to change in your experience in promoting some of these policies, like VBMW or other sort of sustainable transportation policies? What's the pushback that needs to be overcome,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
how?
You know, I always bring evidence to our decision maker. Uh, uh, I would say, as you know, everybody can talk about transportation and talk about congestion. Uh, so when you take a taxi and they can give you, lots of idea how to improve. Uh, Same as in the government, when we join the committee meeting, when people talk about urban landscape, the earthquake impact, I just shut up my mouth. But when we talk about transportation, all the experts, no matter which area, they can talk. They were bring their idea, but most of the time they would they would make mistake and unfortunately even bring the wrong direction, have influence on the decision making. So I would say that in the past 20 years, since I've been promoted as a proof professor quite earlier, so I normally I during the meeting I will try to persuade other experts to respect transportation expert. But I spend lots of effort. So I would say the how to make our decision maker that believe and trust uh, uh, the real expert, particularly in the transportation area, because we have lots. You talk about transit, we have lots of external benefit, which
Hmm.
not easy to internalize, but you have to persuade them to understand.
Yeah, interesting. The role of expert advice. I noticed you had it in one of your slides, but yeah, that and the fact that I think that's a big challenge here, and it sounds like it is still a challenge often in Taiwan. Um, uh, just were there any questions in the Q&A here?
I saw a question for what is a pre-BRT?
Yeah.
Let me quick answer this question. In very early stage, I proposed the bus rapid transit to our mayor. The Mayor Chang. That was 30 years ago. Uh, However, since the mayor promised that he would solve the congestion problem, at that time we call it the dark age of our transportation system. He said, if I cannot solve the problem within 2 years, he will resign. He will resign. And then he asked me how the basic 30-kilometer BRT, how much year you need to implement. I said 4 years. He said, no way. That's make it simple. Okay, let's start by only develop inclusive bus lane, inclusive bus lane. So that's what I call now already 62 kilometer for a very good network. So it's not a real full bus rapid transit. You still have lots of operator, more than 12 bus company, and you still need to pay using a easy car on the vehicle. not in the station. Okay, so I call it a pre-BRT.
Okay. Thank you. Seung, do you have any final comments or uh, remarks or questions for Dr. Chang or
Um,
responses to any of the things that are in the chat here?
yeah, I think I'm looking at, let's see. I think I'm going to try to combine both these questions, one from Jonathan, one from Theodore. Jonathan asked about like transit hostile politicians. Was that ever a thing in Korea or Japan? And Theodore asks if there are any good sticks to disincentivize car ownership or use. I would say, I'm going to speak mainly about Korea for these kind of paired answers questions. Um, Transit hostile, kind of, like um, in like the kind of the right-leaning politicians in Korea, especially in the rural areas, do not really like spending a lot of money on or spending the regional money on rail projects at all. If at best it's kind of the idea that the government needs to foot the whole thing, and it needs to be done with very little interference with kind of the rural areas and stuff like that. Korea is just like Japan, a major car manufacturing country. And so if you go out to the suburbs of Seoul, for example, you'll see a lot of like 6 lane, 8 lane arterial roads that goes right through the suburban areas, very high dense, very high, very family housing kind of areas. Sticks wise, and that kind of leads into the sticks. There really isn't a good stick. I think Korea at least have taken a very maximalist approach where they want to build 8 lane roads. They want to encourage car ownership. But they also want to have it so that underneath those roads there is a metro that runs every 5 minutes, all day, every day, along with 30 bus routes in the same roads. Um, so there really hasn't been that many. I think like if there are any disincentivizing areas, it's kind of the scales economy. I think the average Korean medium income is like $38,000 US. So it's really hard to afford a car and also park a car. So I think just parking out of scarcity, I think maybe the real big disincentivizer.
Great. Okay, I want to thank Sung and Dr. Chang for joining us today. This was fantastic to have you both here with us and sharing your ideas. This again was recorded. We'll be posting it online, and at least we'll have Sung's slides to post as well as mine. So anyone who RSVP to this will get links to that information. And I want to thank you all for coming today. And again, check out Seamless Bay Area's website and mailing list if you want to learn more about some of these different initiatives going on in California. But really inspiring presentations from everyone today. And thank you both.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thank you.